My ex-wife sat in the witness chair during our divorce hearing, looked directly at the judge, and said, with complete conviction, "He's never contributed anything meaningful to this family. I built everything we have." My attorney didn't argue with her. He simply reached into a folder, pulled out a carefully organized binder, and slid it across the table to opposing counsel and the judge. "My name's Gregory. Diane and I were married 26 years before she filed for divorce 18 months ago, citing what she described as irreconcilable differences after what I later learned was a relationship she developed with a business associate over the preceding 2 years. For most of our marriage, we'd maintained a fairly traditional division of labor. Diane worked part-time as an interior design consultant for the first 15 years, scaling up her business considerably in the final decade of our marriage as our children grew older and required less daily attention. I worked as a certified public accountant, eventually becoming a partner at a mid-sized regional accounting firm, providing the substantial majority of our household's financial foundation throughout the marriage. I want to be clear that I never viewed this arrangement as some kind of one-sided contribution. Diane managed our household, raised our 3 children through their formative years, and built a genuinely successful design business in her own right during the later years of our marriage. I never once, throughout 26 years, felt that our partnership was unequal in the ways that actually mattered. What surprised me, once divorce proceedings began, was the specific narrative Diane's attorney started constructing. One suggesting that my financial contributions had been minimal or incidental, while her own efforts had essentially built and sustained our family's entire financial foundation. Diane's design business, over its final decade, had grown substantially, eventually generating significant independent income that, admittedly, exceeded my own accounting salary during several of our marriage's final years. I think this success, combined with the relationship she developed with her business associate Marcus, gradually reshaped how Diane viewed our marriage's financial history, retroactively minimizing decades of my own contributions in favor of a narrative that positioned her recent business success as the primary financial engine of our family throughout. Diane's attorney, a sharp litigator named Patricia Vance, built the divorce case partly around this narrative, arguing for a settlement structure that would have significantly favored Diane based on the claim that my financial contributions to the marriage had been comparatively minor, particularly in recent years. I hired my own attorney, a methodical, detail-oriented man named Frank Alvarez, who'd handled several complex divorce cases involving substantial joint assets. Frank's approach from the beginning was straightforward. Rather than argue emotionally against Diane's characterization, we would simply document, comprehensively and factually, exactly what 26 years of financial contribution actually looked like. Frank spent several weeks working with a forensic accountant to compile a comprehensive financial history spanning our entire marriage, every mortgage payment on our primary residence, fully paid off 12 years, into the marriage, largely through my accounting salary. The complete funding history of our 3 children's college educations, totaling just over $400,000 across all 3 kids, predominantly funded through my earnings, and a dedicated education savings account I'd maintained since each child's birth. 22 years of consistent retirement contributions to accounts held jointly and individually, and a detailed accounting of household expenses covered primarily through my income throughout the marriage's early and middle years, before Diane's business began generating substantial independent revenue. The binder Frank prepared wasn't designed to diminish Diane's own genuine contributions. Her design business income during the marriage's final decade was clearly documented and fully credited in our proposed settlement calculations. It was designed simply to establish an accurate, complete picture of 26 years of combined financial partnership, rather than the selectively recent narrative Diane's testimony was constructing. The divorce hearing addressing asset division took place before Judge Eleanor Ramirez, an experienced family court judge known for her methodical, evidence-focused approach to complex financial disputes. Diane testified first, describing our marriage's financial history in terms that emphasized her own business success and characterized my accounting career as, in her words, steady but never particularly ambitious, and stating directly under oath, "He's never contributed anything meaningful to this family. I built everything we have, especially these last several years." Patricia Vance, Diane's attorney, used this testimony to argue for a settlement structure weighted significantly toward Diane's favor, positioning her business as the family's primary asset-generating force throughout the marriage. When it came time for our response, Frank didn't cross-examine Diane aggressively or argue emotionally against her characterization. He simply stood calmly and said, "Your Honor, we'd like to enter into evidence a comprehensive financial summary spanning the full 26 years of this marriage, before sliding the carefully organized binder across to both opposing counsel and the judge's bench." Judge Ramirez reviewed the documentation methodically over the following several minutes, occasionally asking Frank clarifying questions about specific figures. The record showed, clearly and without dispute, that my accounting income had funded the substantial majority of our household expenses for the first 16 years of the marriage, had fully funded our home's mortgage payoff, had covered the overwhelming majority of our 3 children's combined college expenses, and had maintained consistent retirement contributions throughout the entire marriage, regardless of fluctuations in either spouse's income. The documentation also clearly credited Diane's design business income during the marriage's final decade, showing it had meaningfully supplemented, though not replaced, the financial foundation I'd built and maintained throughout the preceding 16 years. Judge Ramirez, reviewing the complete 26-year picture rather than Diane's selectively recent characterization, noted directly from the bench that the testimony describing my contributions as minimal or non-meaningful was, in her words, not supported by the comprehensive financial record now before this court. Diane's expression, according to my sister who'd accompanied me to the hearing for support, shifted noticeably once the judge made that observation. The confident narrative she'd built around her own business success suddenly measured against 26 years of documented reality rather than a recent favorable framing. The final settlement, negotiated over the following weeks with the accurate financial history now clearly established, reflected a considerably more balanced division than Diane's attorney had originally proposed, one that fairly credited both my decades of primary financial support and Diane's genuine, substantial business success during the marriage's later years, without allowing either party's narrative to overshadow the other's actual documented contribution. I never sought to diminish Diane's business achievements in this process, and Frank made sure our proposed settlement clearly reflected fair credit for what she genuinely built. What I did want, and what the settlement ultimately achieved, was simply an accurate accounting that didn't erase 26 years of financial partnership behind a narrative built around only its most recent chapter. Diane and I don't speak much now, beyond necessary co-parenting logistics regarding our now adult children. I don't harbor deep resentment about the divorce itself, or even about Diane's relationship with Marcus, which is genuinely not my business at this point in either of our lives. What I do think about, occasionally, is how easily a narrative can shift once someone's recent success starts feeling more central to their self-understanding than a longer, quieter history of shared effort. Diane's testimony that day wasn't necessarily malicious. I think she'd genuinely come to believe over the preceding 2 years that her own recent achievements represented the fuller truth of our marriage's financial story. 26 years of bank statements simply told a more complete version of that story than either of us had been actively remembering by the time we reached that courtroom. If this story got to you, the next one is even more unexpected. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it.